business, or are you running a business? Valuation is the ultimate KPI.
Hey there, welcome to another episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast, brought to you by Truelytics, the one and only advisor transition management platform for the wealth management and insurance industries. My name is Mike Langford, and I'm the host of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. And this week on the show, Terry Mullen, the CEO and co-founder of Truelytics, is back with me. And we're going to spend a lot of time going deep on two core areas of advisor transition management. Number one, recruiting. We're revisiting recruiting from a different angle from the conversation that I had with Matthew Bassick a few weeks ago. In this case, we're going to be spending a lot more time on it from the perspective of the executive at the enterprise and what recruiting advisors means to your broker-dealer, your large RIA firm, your wirehouse, your custodian, right? What does it mean to have more advisors in the pool and to make sure that that advisor population stays strong and robust now and into the future? Secondly, with a lot of stuff in between, before we get to secondly, we'll also talk a lot about continuity management and what does that mean, right? That, in the event that an advisor gets hit by the proverbial bus, or as Terry says, gets hit by the Uber, probably more apt now, right? More people are taking Ubers and buses, I think, in most situations. But anyway, what do you do? Is everything in place for somebody to take over for that advisor? And how important is it to have not only processes in place, but the right technology solutions in place to support that? So really, really interesting stuff in there. And of course, if you've listened to other podcasts with Terry and I, there's some humor in there, some joking around. It's back and forth as well. So really fun discussion. I think you're going to like it a lot. So as always, make sure you do like and subscribe to the podcast if you haven't already. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, SoundCloud, Stitcher, wherever you like to get your podcast jam on. We're probably there. And if we're not, by the way, let me know. We'll get that feed subscribed over there. You could also swing by Truelytics.com. Check us out under the resources, and you'll see the Modern Financial Advisor section there, and you'll see the podcast and the articles and everything. So do swing by the website and spend some time there. There's lots of really exciting and informative information there. And lastly, make sure you send in your topics and suggestions for the show. If you have a suggestion for a guest, please send it in, or a topic you'd like to see covered. Little kind of preview. We've got a podcast coming up that'll be talking about advisor fashion, like clothing fashion, right? And how important that is for the success of your business. And a little hint, right? If you spend some time thinking about how nicely designed your office is, maybe thinking about how nicely designed your wardrobe is, and what that says about you to prospects, clients, referral partners along the way, might want to think about that as well. So really exciting stuff. So without further ado, let's get to the podcast here with Terry Mullen. Let's rip. Hey, Terry, it's great to have you on the show again. It feels like forever, but it hasn't been that long since you've been on the show. So welcome back.
Thank you very much. It's good to be back. And I'm trying to figure out, I was actually thinking this morning, do podcasters ever have people come in and sub like those late night shows? Because I would love to sub for you one time.
Yes, they do actually. It's that actually does happen quite often. I mean, I'm a bit of a podcast junkie. I listen to a variety of them, mostly on sports, I guess. But yeah, it happens, right? Somebody's like, hey, I'm going to be away for the week or whatever, and they have a guest sit in or a guest co-host or whatever that is. But yeah, so you're welcome to tee you up anytime.
Well, great. It's fun. I actually went out and bought a microphone, so I feel like I'm Joe Rogan.
And you sound fantastic. You've got a great voice for the podcast medium.
Good. I have a face for radio.
Exactly. You know what's really interesting about that? I mean, as I mentioned, I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I really do think there is kind of a medium voice that is just the right tenor for listening to. Too high of a pitch or too nasally, not going to work for you, right? You kind of have to have that just middle of the road. You can't have a super deep voice either. You got it right in the middle of the road. So I think you and I are doing well.
Well, I hope this stays in because I know people are coming on to listen about recruiting, and we'll get to that, I'm sure. But I have become addicted to podcasts as well because it gives people an opportunity to have a discussion and talk about things that you can't do in a 6-minute interview on a network TV or somewhere like that. And you can have the opportunity to freelance and you're right. You have to have a certain voice. You don't have those, radio voices from the 70s and 80s that you remember. That's how you got on the radio, was to have that, whatever type of radio voice. But anyway,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
great to be
It's
here.
interesting. Great to have you. It's one other little thing. Building on that, I think one of the reasons why it's you feel connected to pods and so do I, is you really do feel like you start to have a relationship with those folks. It doesn't, even though it is a one-way medium that you're just listening, because you have your headphones on or whatever, or you're taking it with you and you're time shifting when you listen to it. You can listen to it, pause, go do something else, click play again later. It really does feel like you're building that relationship with somebody. And I think that's what we're doing here with this show, is that over time, we are really building a connection with our audience. And you see some of the, you look at the stats and so forth, you see some of the same consistent folks, that are listening. You see a lot of the same people retweet and like and all that type of stuff. So you really do feel like you're building relationships over time. And I'm always surprised with out of the blue replies or comments, right? Like some people are listening and they never comment, they never retweet or whatever, but out of nowhere, you'll get a little email like, "Hey, listen to that episode. It was really great." So you are having an impact over time.
That's great. Awesome.
Fantastic. So on the last show, well, actually not on the last show, 2 shows ago, we had Matthew Bassick on the show, and it was at your recommendation. Matthew is a veteran of recruiting for broker-dealers and wealth management firms. And he brought a lot of insights. And as you mentioned, when you teed him up as somebody that should be on the show, he was somewhat of an inspiration for the creation of True Recruit, which will be launching here in Q1 of 2020. And you were originally going to be on the show with the two of us, and you got pulled away for a last-minute travel and were unable to make it. And so Matthew and I rocked and rolled together. And but afterwards, you and I were chatting up a bit, and we said, we should probably fill in some other gaps that Matthew and I didn't get to, which was, particularly around the enterprise's perspective when it comes to recruiting. Because Matthew and I chatted a lot about what motivates the mindset of an individual advisor and what would make them receptive to being recruited. And we talked a lot about kind of the individual process and so forth, but we really didn't get into the enterprise meat of it all. So I thought maybe, given that you've been deeply involved in building out True Recruit, that's coming, and that's inspired by the enterprise needs, maybe we could talk a little bit about why is recruiting such a big deal for the enterprise?
Well, just to get back to your first couple comments about Matthew, Matthew and I go back a long way. I actually hired him into the business back in the mid 90s. And he told the story. He was on the wholesale side and then got into the broker dealer world very successfully. And, when I was out talking to friends and family about Truelytics, Matthew actually was one of our investors. And about a year and a half into Truelytics, as most people know that listen to this, the first year and a half was really us rebuilding the software so it would have enterprise capabilities. But right after that launched, Matthew and I were having a conversation, and he said, "Terry, all of the information that you capture at the time it was called the Truelytics evaluation," he said, "that's the information I need to make an offer to a recruit." And, and he said, "And it's way better." He said, "You actually capture more information than I need, but that would be information that would be great." And I started thinking about it and said, that's a really great idea. And he told me about the process. And this sort of gets to the question from an enterprise standpoint. Not only do they have to do all of that stuff where they're excited, getting the potential recruit excited about their firm and why it makes sense and all that stuff. They have to get the information so they can make them an offer, and it takes a long time. The challenge is that once that recruit becomes engaged, the way that they do it today is completely archaic. I mean, it literally is. And I have gotten the way that multiple broker dealers do it, and almost all of them, it's the same thing. They have a PDF document or a Word document that they email to somebody with all the questions that they need filled out, and they fill it out, and then they either give it to the external recruiter or to the internal recruiter. They then take it and fax it or scan it and email it into somebody in the home office, who then takes it and puts it into some Excel spreadsheet that then they email to somebody in finance, who takes it and looks at it and all the relevant information on GDC and product breakdown and all that stuff. And then they, send a note back through email and say, hey, we need this form or that form to make sure that they're actually telling us what they're telling us is true. And then it comes back, and that entire process takes forever. It is so labor intensive. And we have a platform that is already doing all that online in software, that we can make that a seamless process to help them onboard those recruits. So I got really excited about that and started talking to the folks in here internally. We were still in the middle of, as a small team, we can't be all things to all people, but I was banging it around for probably 6 or 7 months that we need to do something with this recruiting thing. The name True Recruit hadn't even come up, and I think Jeremy and I were talking to somebody, one of the heads of a broker dealer, and the light went off in Jeremy's head, and he said, "Wow, I think we're onto something here." And over a course of a weekend, Jeremy and I just sat down and came up with what is the precursor. It was a little bit different version of it, of True Recruit. In the summer, we were talking to one of our strategic partners on the broker dealer side, and they were literally like doing backflips, and they actually helped us accelerate True Recruit so it will be able to come out in the first quarter. So I think that this is a really great opportunity for broker dealers to take an archaic process and bring it into the 21st century.
What's interesting about it, when I first thought about, there's going to be a recruiting offering, very similar to what you said, you can't be all things to all people. But that lasted all of about 60 seconds, because then I started thinking, well, advisor recruiting is a form of transition for an advisor. An advisor is going to be considering moving from one firm to another, right? And the enterprise is always going to be in the need of adding new advisors, right, to either grow the firm or to backfill advisors who have left, right? So there's this process, and in my experience, and I mentioned this during my conversation with Matthew, I've worked with broker dealers in helping them recruit, being a speaker at some of the recruiting events and so forth, and I've seen firsthand the amount of resources and the urgency that most firms are putting on recruiting, and anything that can not only remove friction from that process. You mentioned a whole bunch of that friction, with paper and PDF and spreadsheets going along, but also allow that process to become more efficient and effective, right? That we're actually, it works better, right? So I'm 100% on board. I get it. It's absolutely part of that advisor transition management concept that we're building.
As a matter of fact, it is the first part of transitions, right? So as I see it, as we see it at Truelytics, transitions is any time somebody moves from one firm to another, whether that's an wirehouse guy going independent, an independent person moving broker dealers, an independent advisor going full RIA and going to a custodian. Those are all transitions. A transition is also somebody gets hit by an Uber and they have to have a continuity plan kick in, or look for a successor. That, succession from success or to success E, or it could be M&A. All of those things are transitions. And right now, this industry is going through a great transition, as I think we've probably talked about on this podcast before. There are so many dollars up for grabs, and there's so much risk for broker dealers and custodians because of those things. People moving firms, people going independent, people going completely independent away from broker dealers, and people getting hit by buses, dying, retiring. That's an opportunity for these firms to either capture or lose assets. And that's what the ATM platform is designed to do, an end-to-end data-driven solution for broker-dealers and custodians and asset managers, OSJs, RIAs. And the first step of that is the True Recruit, which is, I think, as you said in the last episode, the number one concern for broker-dealers and custodians. I spoke to CEO of one of our clients, and I asked him, what is the job of a CEO of a broker-dealer? And he said, Terry, I have 3 things that I am worried about and that I get judged on: recruiting new assets, growing assets, and retaining assets. That's it.
And you think about how recruiting fits into that concept, right? You bring on a new advisor, you are, bringing on not only a new body, if you will, you're bringing on new assets in most cases, right? Especially if you're recruiting existing advisors. You're not just bringing on, newly minted, CFPs or something like that.
Yeah. And when you think about the part of what I didn't answer in that last question was the process and that saving time is saving money, and taking it from the current state to future state. It's also very expensive. I mean, when you think about the dollars that they put into recruiting, from marketing to internal resources to external resources, right? A lot of these firms rely on not only internal recruiters, but external recruiters who are the people that source these advisors that are either looking to, have the aspirational story, as you said, and looking to grow, or the cautionary tale, looking to, not die. Those are reasons why people leave. And that's what those external recruiters are trying to find, those people and match them up with the right broker dealers. Well, that's great, but that's a huge expense. Somewhere between 6 and 9% of the revenue that is brought over is paid out to an external recruiter. That's tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm not saying these people don't have a value proposition, but that's a lot of money. And if there's a way to reduce that, we think that there's a place for us to help our enterprise clients to do that.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right in that. I mean, look, some things work the way they work. And people always go, hey, that's the way it's always been done. And okay, fine, it's the most efficient way of doing it. But, there are certain segments of our industry, and I think our industry is often more guilty than others just due to the regulatory constraints that we have. And some of it just, people are creatures of habit, if you will, right? People, if you look across most industries, people move more often than they do in the financial services enterprise, right? And most of your enterprise personnel, if you look at the typical financial firm, those people have been there for a while compared to, say, a tech firm, right? Where the churn is much more. So people tend to get kind of comfortable in their ways. But as we look at the future, lots of what we're seeing in the industry says, hey, 40% of advisors, roughly, are going to be retiring in the next decade.
Yep.
That is going to put a hurting, as they would say here in Texas, that's going to put a hurting on your business, right? Because, for a business that requires advisors to be there, right? If you're an independent broker dealer, you serve advisors. They are your customers. So getting them to come in and doing that with speed and scale, it's probably not feasible with the traditional way you've been doing it, of like waiting for some external recruiter to send you a referral and then going through that PDF process you described, right? Speed and scale are going to be a required element of success going forward.
Absolutely. And as I say often, that this industry is collapsing up, right? Because you have, as you said, 40% of the advisors, according to many studies, are going to retire or exit the business in the next 10 years. And who's going to be the one catching those assets? Well, clearly the broker dealers and custodians, asset managers, they want to keep them, but do they have the personnel or the advisors to be able to handle it? Do we have the training programs that are bringing in, 150 advisors a month or potential advisors to recruit, and become potential advisors? I used to work at Dean Witter back in the early 90s, and I was one of the people that trained the 150 advisors that came through every month, 11 months a year. And it was unbelievable. We had, that's more than 1,000 advisors are getting trained each year. Now, at the end of the first year of their tenure, 70 or 80% of them were already flushed out of the system. Well, those training programs, whether it's at a brokerage firm or even the insurance companies, aren't nearly as robust as they used to be for any number of reasons, right? But where's the new blood coming from? And is the new blood the same as the old blood, right? The way that it used to work when you got out of that Dean Witter training program or Merrill Lynch training program, you were given a desk, a phone, and a phone book. And it was, okay, go get them, cowboy. Well, no wonder, the ones that succeeded were really good. And now they're the ones that have, $1 billion in AUM. That's not the generation that we have today. So it's no wonder we're not seeing the new people come in. But to your point, there is going to be a huge opportunity and a huge risk for firms that don't figure it out over the next 10 years because of the demographics and the dynamics of the industry. And guess what? There's very little new blood coming in. Right now, they're just trading. It's literally like trading people, trading chess pieces. There's very little new advisors coming in to create new opportunities. And I think that's where the industry's got to figure it out. How can they bring on new, younger advisors who can relate to the new generation of millennials who are coming up and do it in a way? Because to your point earlier, technology in this industry has been, behind the times in most, not in all cases, because there are certain places where technology in financial services is far beyond other places. But in this advisor facing type of stuff, it's way behind, in part because the people that are the largest producers who have the most assets, who are 60, 65 years old, they don't even know how in many cases to use an iPhone. So they can't embrace or don't embrace technology the way they should. So you're right. They absolutely have to figure out how to do it faster, do it more efficiently, find new people to come in to the industry. And I'll tell you, one of the things that I think is going to be an interesting trend, and that is that you will see advisors who went independent 20, 30 years ago because they wanted to get away from having to sell one product and wanted access to more products, or they wanted a higher payout because they didn't think the payout was high enough. They're going to go back to being employees and sell their book back to someone where they can become an employee. It may not be a wirehouse. In some cases it may, but it could be, a hybrid RIA or an RIA where they go in and for the next couple of years, they are an employee. They transition their book over to someone that's younger or to someone else in that firm. And they then retire and go into the sunset because the days of the solo practitioner being able to do this forever are gone because of the regulatory issues, et cetera. So I completely agree that this industry needs to change the way they've been doing it.
That's a really interesting thought. And we've actually had articles, blog posts written on the Truelytics blog about that general concept that broker dealers may want to consider offering advisors the ability to become employees, right? Kind of ownership, if you will, to just bring them back into the fold, or may want to start to consider doing that hybrid RIA approach for much of the reasons you discussed. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, LPL just 6 months ago or so announced that they purchased an RIA down in Florida, and they're, that puts them into the, employee-based model. I think Kestra does it. I would not be surprised. And it's not because they want to compete with their independent affiliated advisors. That's not the reason they're doing it. It's because they want to preserve the assets of those advisors that are retiring. And, they would prefer probably to try to get someone else that's already affiliated with their firm to buy it. But in some cases, those firms they're not in a position to be able to do that. So I think it's out of self-preservation.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's really fascinating to think about that transition happening, like the kind of the coming full circle, if you will, in some ways. From the beginning of, the early 2000s there, as we changed the new century, you saw a lot of change, a lot of people going independent, and the thought that you'd see this kind of reversion a little bit would be a really interesting take.
Well, just sorry, Mike, but on that point, I started in 1986, and I became a wholesaler in the field in 1987 as a 22-year-old, and I was calling on what at the time was called IM&R, and LPL was around. They had, I think, just done the deal with, put Linsco and Private Ledger together. And, it was a fairly small boutique industry, but over the next, 10, 15 years, I saw a wave of people that were at wirehouses or banks or some other, employee-based type of firm go independent. And in almost every case, and not in all cases, clearly, but in almost every case, it was for one of the two reasons that I mentioned earlier. It was because if in 1987, or if you were at Merrill Lynch, you could sell Merrill Lynch products if they were packaged, mutual funds, things like that, annuities. If you were at an insurance company, which was another place where people were coming out and going independent, it was because, look, I have clients that need products that aren't just Manulifes or John Hancock's or Lincoln's or who you name it, and it wasn't because or they wanted a higher payout, right? If you're getting a 35% payout and firm's taking 65, you do some math on the back of a napkin and say, you know what, I think I could have a expense ratio of 50%, and I'll make a 15 points more. So it was one of those two reasons. It was rarely because they said to themselves, you know what, I want to be an independent business owner. I want to be an entrepreneur, because it comes along with a lot of stuff that's now,
Sure.
20 years on, 25 years on, 30 years on. It's not the same. I mean, the regulatory and the legal risks that you have as a small business owner in today's environment isn't worth it in many cases. So I've been talking about this for the last 3 years. It was the reason that I decided to become an entrepreneur and buy Truelytics, was because I thought that the platform that we purchased was the perfect base to build off of what we're doing in this advisor transition management platform. So from recruiting, which we've been talking about, to true performance, which everybody's heard and I think know is the business intelligence, the health diagnosis for your business, and then true continuity, which I believe will be a game changer, because today, even if you're one of the 27% that actually has a formal emergency continuity or formal succession plan, that's just the agreement, whether that's a financial agreement or written agreement for, you taking over or ownership of that at that event. But what would happen in an emergency if you're my continuity partner? You're in, Austin, Texas. I'm over in Waco, and I get hit by a bus. And now you are responsible. First of all, you might not find out about it for, 3, 4, 5 days or more. And by the time you get over, you don't even have a key to my office. You don't know anything about it, right? And it will take weeks, if not months, to get situated there. And during that time, assets are flying out the door. And that's going to not only fly out the door of assets that you could manage, but fly out the door of the broker dealer that you're associated with, because now they're going over to another broker dealer custodian. So it is just so true continuity, I think, is a game changer in the industry. And then the last one is True Match on the ATM platform, where we create private marketplaces for enterprises to help those transitions stay in-house, because there is no doubt in my mind, and so far no one's been able to convince me otherwise, that No one can pay more for your business than someone that is at your broker dealer or someone that's at your custodian than another person that's at that broker dealer custodian or the broker dealer itself.
That makes a lot of sense when you think about that concept. I mean, like there's two things that were very much intertwined there, right? You mentioned the potential for catastrophic loss of assets in a unexpected succession planning situation, right? So somebody passes away, hit by the proverbial bus or whatever, and suddenly the person who may already had a succession plan, a continuity plan in place. The challenge is by the time that gets all worked out, there could be all sorts of vaporizing of the business, unfortunately. I think the same is true as you mentioned. Like if you're considering selling your business to somebody outside of the broker dealer, outside of the firm, there's so much more risk. And so as a result, you're going to pay much, much less for that. So I think those two are very much connected.
Absolutely. And I think that, the unexpected one, right? So we think of succession as either planned or unplanned, right? Unplanned is right. the one where, die, death, disability, hit by the Uber. And obviously that doesn't happen as much. But it happens. I mean, I know of a firm last year that had 6 of those happen. And then, the other one is the outside. These public marketplaces that are out there, and there's several, I don't think have had the success that they wanted to have because for a couple of those reasons. Number one, it is hard to put a price on a transaction when I have to move all of the money from whether it's a broker dealer platform, custodial platform, that's repapering 100% of my clients' assets. That takes a long time. It's very expensive. And if I am a smart business person who's looking to acquire that, I'm going to take all of that into consideration. Now, there's 2 parts of a transaction, when you think about it in this industry, right? The price that they're going to pay and the deal structure, right? And I'll let you name your price if I get to have the deal structure or I get to name the terms, because right. Most of it is going to be set up on the back end. And a lot of times people think they're getting, 2x, 3x, 4x revenue or whatever metric they want to use. And ultimately they don't, because of not only the risk of not bringing over assets, but God forbid, what happens if the market takes a downturn and, the assets go down by 20%? Well, I just, took away 20% plus the stuff that I wasn't able to bring over.
What's really interesting is this really brings the entire podcast episode here to full circle, right? So when I think about, everything we've described today, it really is about systematizing complexity in all of the advisor transition management process, specifically recruiting, as we teed up at the beginning of the episode here, and some of the processes you were just describing there, that in each step along the way, it's complex just by rule. It has to be, right? Like if you're selling a business to somebody, it's not as easy as like, write me a check and I'm out of here, right? It's you're dealing with, financial relationships. There's all sorts of issues going on in terms of, like the regulatory constraints, as we've talked about before. There's contracts with the broker dealer and everything, and individual service contracts with the clients. So as you mentioned, repapering everything, recruiting at the moment is really complex, right? So to benefit the industry, for them to scale and move at a quicker pace and to become more efficient, adding systems in there that can remove some of that complexity, so that Truelytics and the technology behind the scenes can take away some of that complexity and allow, frankly, these enterprises, a lot of people don't think of them as such, but they're small businesses in many cases. Like, you see firms that have tens of billions of dollars of AUM across all their advisors. And if you look at the size of the team of the people who are working at those broker dealers, very often it'll surprise you at how small it is, right? And so to me, bringing technology in there and well thought out systems that technology supports is a key to the future.
I agree. I think that, and I've been talking about this for, a year or two. I think that there are some places where the industry needs a utility, right? They need standardization, and that's what we think that we can be for the industry for this advisor transition management platform, because we're a software company. We're not in the business of M&A consulting. We're not in the business of recruiting, right? Even though we call it True Recruit, we're just the platform, the back end, right? It can be that nobody even knows that we're there. We're the intel inside. Because as a broker dealer, if they want to do it in-house, they are not ever going to be able to do it as well as we can, because it's not core to their business. Right. So I can tell you, since we started Truelytics, or at least since July of 2018, we've had, I think, 16 or 17 new releases. We're about to be on like a 30-day or 45-day release schedule, which is roughly a little bit, maybe not as fast prior. But the industry needs a solution to this. And, I whether it's Truelytics, and hopefully we're the one, but somebody has to help this industry, because you're absolutely right. This complexity that is out there with recruiting, with succession planning, with M&A, all of these things right now, as I said earlier, the process is broken, and we believe that we have a solution. And there's no wonder why over the last 18 months we've closed 25 plus enterprises and have over 7,100 advisory firms on our platform today. And onboarding, there's more than 40,000 advisors associated with those enterprises I mentioned. So I think we're on our way to helping this industry solve some of the problems they have.
That is really exciting stuff, and I think that's really well put. So wrapping up here, one of the things I like to do at the end, as you know, is make sure everybody has the opportunity to reach out and get in touch with you should they have questions. And I know everybody can, just go to truelytics.com, whatever. But what's the best way for somebody to reach out to you individually if they're like, I got to hear more from Terry, or I want to have Terry on another podcast because I love his voice?
Awesome. The best way is Terry, Terry, at Truelytics, Truelytics.com. Or you can call me on my phone, my cell, 610-585-6780. I will answer unless it looks like it's a one of those calls that you don't want to answer. And I always do. But can I tell a funny story as we wrap up?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
So that number that I just gave is one digit off from an eye doctor or an eye clinic. And instead of 585, it's 565. So, and it's a 610 number, right? And I'm in Boston, and 610 is Philadelphia. So every time I would get a 610 number, it was somebody I figured I knew. So I would answer it, and you would hear a little bit of a pause. And then typically it would be an older woman or gentleman saying, is this Riddle Eye? And I'd say, no, it's not. It's, and I literally give them, it's 610-565. And then I would start joking like, you must have trouble seeing or something, because, and now, how on your cell, it can give you an opportunity to say you're on the phone, or I'll call you back later.
Yeah.
If it's a 610 number, mine says, if you're looking for Riddle Eye, it's 586-565-6780.
Perfect.
If I were an advisor, I would have leads coming out my, what.
So, by the way, for the advisors who happen to have listened to the end here, I'm going to give you a little underutilized trick that you can actually get business from. If you know that an advisor has recently gone out of business in your area, you can go buy up their unused phone number. Does that make sense? So as an example, if you find out that like, an advisor was, 610 whatever, and they've recently retired or whatever, sometimes people just let the phone number go. So you can go ahead and grab the phone number, right? And you never know, you might get that little quick call in, or same thing with somebody decides they're going out of business and they close down their website, grab the website.
I was going to say that sounds like
have it auto forward.
Those smart guys in the beginning of the internet that would that knew what it was going to become, and they locked down like every single major company that hadn't already done its website, and the companies, they were holding them hostage. They'd have to
the
pay
squatters,
thousands of dollars to get their website back.
Well, people do. I mean, I spent a lot of time in the startup community, and you'd be surprised at how much people, when they start a new business and they're ready to launch, something that's going to need a website, is going to be a big part of it. They'll spend $50,000 on a website, and somebody's been sitting on that thing, paying the $10 a year domain fee for a long time and waiting for that day to come.
Awesome. Hey, Mike, this was
man.
a lot of fun. I would like to do this again.
Let's do more of it. I think we're going to be together here in the next week and a half. So let's make sure we record something while we're there.
Awesome.
All right, buddy. We'll talk
Thanks.
to you soon.
Take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. All right. Thank you very much for listening to this episode of the Modern Financial Advisor podcast. It's really exciting to have you here and to kind of be part of how this podcast and frankly, Truelytics has evolved over time. Terry was on the first ever episode of the podcast talking about the Truelytics origin story. And back in that first podcast, we called the podcast the Valuations Podcast because a lot of the focus of Truelytics was on creating valuations for advisory practices and wealth management firms. And the Truelytics scorecard, the evaluation scorecard, was showing you all these different key performance indicators to let you know about how stable your business was from a variety of different areas and how you compared to other businesses that were peers of yours, that were of similar size and scope. And that stuff still exists in the True Performance module of Advisor Transition Management. And that just goes to show you how things are evolving, because as we started to look at the industry and talk to more clients in the industry and start bringing on more and more broker-dealers and more advisors, we're up over 7,400 advisors on the platform now. We learn more. We get a feel for what's needed, where are the gaps, where are people struggling, where are businesses struggling. And we started to recognize that there needed to be a comprehensive look at the entire advisor life cycle and the entire business life cycle in the industry. So now you start to see True Recruit, so the recruiting side, bringing advisors onto the firm, right? You start to see some more stuff around True Match coming on. So more things about like True Continuity coming. So matching you with succession partners, putting in place an emergency continuity locker. So in the event that something happens, your business doesn't just disappear into the ether and the clients don't just fade away, right? We want to make sure that we're taking care of your business every step along the way and supporting you and doing what you need. So that's been really exciting. The other little fun thing that's been exciting for me is really thinking about how my relationship with Terry, as I've seen, here we are, 28 episodes later from that first episode, how our relationship has grown and how our comfort with each other has grown from a conversational perspective. And that first episode, it felt, frankly, kind of just very like if I was a host or a moderator on a panel and Terry was there being interviewed by me. And in this latest one, you can hear that it's very conversational in nature. We've grown to know each other really well. The banter back and forth is really comfortable. And it's kind of a testament to some of the things that Terry and I talked about at the beginning of this podcast, where both of us are very big fans of podcasts as a medium and what it does for you and creates the relationship you have with the host, even though you may not have met the host. For Terry and I, most of our conversations are either on the phone via Zoom video chat or in this kind of format. And it's only been recently in the last 7-8 months or so that we've actually get to spend some time together one-on-one. And that's a power of this type of stuff where it's accelerated the relationships. And I've talked a lot about this over the years, about the power of digital communication, digital marketing, social media, can accelerate relationships with your clients, prospects, referral partners, and in certain cases, your business partners, the people you're working with on a day-to-day basis. Your relationships can be accelerated if you're doing things correctly. And so I was really, really excited to kind of see that in full effect here in this episode. So I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Make sure you do check out some of those earlier episodes if you missed them, because I think there's lots of great nuggets in there for you as well. And like I said at the beginning of the show, make sure you do like and subscribe to the podcast and send in those suggestions. Love to hear from you. Send them in to me at mike@truelytics.com or podcast@truelytics.com, or just swing by the website and put some suggestions in there. Love to hear from you. Okay? Hope you're having a great day, and we'll see you next time on the Modern Financial Advisor Podcast. See ya. Bye.